A landmark verdict in the closely watched Cipollone case came on Monday, June 13, 1988, at 5 p.m. Defense attorneys were made available for immediate interviews and comments at the courthouse to ensure balanced coverage as news of the verdict broke.
It was a complete victory, a complete vindication of my client, Lorillard. I think the jury's decision is also significant in that it is a victory for all three defendants and for the industry on the most serious charges that were levied, that is, the charges of fraud and conspiracy.
We're very pleased that the jury has rejected plaintiffs' claims of fraud and plaintiffs' claims of conspiracy and has basically upheld the defense position in this case that the plaintiff is responsible for her knowing actions and conduct.
Like all other American juries, this jury concluded that people who smoke have a freedom to choose and they are responsible for their choice. And that, I think, came out loud and clear in this verdict.
This is the CBS Evening News. I'm Charles Kuralt, sitting in for Dan Rather. Good evening. For the first time, a tobacco company was found legally liable today for contributing to the death of a cigarette smoker. But it was a qualified defeat for the tobacco interests, so much so that both sides managed to claim victory after today's verdict in a federal court in Newark, New Jersey. Richard Schlesinger has our report.
Well, there was some good news for the tobacco industry in today's verdict. The jury exonerated Liggett, Lorillard, and Philip Morris of charges they conspired to mislead the public about the hazards of cigarettes. And in another decision that can only be viewed as a victory for the tobacco companies, the jury decided Mrs. Cipollone was 80% responsible for her own death, largely agreeing with tobacco industry claims that smoking is a matter of choice.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. Are tobacco companies liable if people who smoke their cigarettes die of cancer? Yes and no, according to a federal court jury which tonight returned a verdict in a major case on this important question. NBC's Stan Bernard with more tonight on this complicated case from Newark, New Jersey.
The six-member jury found the three tobacco companies were not guilty of fraud and did not conspire to conceal the harmful effects of smoking. This was the first case in which a judge allowed evidence of such a conspiracy, and the jury ruled that the evidence was insufficient.
We're very pleased that the jury has rejected plaintiffs' claims of fraud and plaintiffs' claims of conspiracy and has basically upheld the defense position in this case.
Today's verdict is likely to dampen down the enthusiasm by attorneys who take these cases and have to finance them, hoping for a big win and then the big fees.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Sitting in tonight, Larry Serafin.
Good evening. For the first time, a tobacco company has been found liable for contributing to a smoker's death. That was the verdict today by a federal jury in a highly publicized case in Newark, New Jersey, but it was only a partial defeat for the industry.
The three tobacco companies that were on trial here in federal court insisted that they were pleased with the jury's verdict.
It is a victory for all three defendants and for the industry on the most serious charges that were levied, that is, the charges of fraud and conspiracy.
This is ABC News Nightline. Substituting for Ted Koppel and reporting from Washington, James Walker.
At first glance, it looks like a clear-cut victory for anti-smoking forces who have been suing the tobacco companies for over 30 years. Why then, after the verdict, were lawyers for the tobacco companies proclaiming victory?
For the tobacco industry, which threw 50-odd lawyers and a battalion of public relations troops into the Cipollone case, the $400,000 award may have been cause for celebration.
What they thought was originally the sexiest, the most exciting part of the case, a jury rejected. And I just doubt very seriously if it's going to encourage a lot of people to bring lawsuits. We'll just have to wait and see.
Topping the news this morning, both sides claim victory in a cigarette lawsuit.
This is NBC News at sunrise.
But tobacco industry lawyers felt they had beaten back a new tactic, a charge of fraud and conspiracy to hide the dangers of smoking.
It's hard for me to imagine that a lot of people are going to jump in and bring new lawsuits when $400,000 recovery is all you can look forward to after many, many years of very hard-nosed litigating.
To maximize coverage of the defense reaction, TV stations across the country were offered live interviews with industry attorneys via satellite. 47 stations conducted interviews which were aired on 59 newscasts, reaching more than 43 million viewers.
In a satellite interview, the defense attorney in the landmark court case said this would not open a floodgate for similar lawsuits.
It's a $400,000 return if it's ever collected on an investment that the plaintiff's lawyers say themselves was in between $2 million and $3 million in time and expenses. So I don't think it's a very good return for them, and I don't think if I were a plaintiff's lawyer that I would want to bring this type of case.
Does Liggett accept any moral responsibility for Rose Cipollone's death?
Oh, absolutely not. There's no reason to do that. You'd seen the Surgeon General's report. She saw the warnings on the packages. And the jury, in this case, accepted the fundamental argument that the defendants, tobacco companies, had been advancing, in this case and other cases, with respect to that. And that is no recovery for somebody who makes their own decision to use any product when they're aware of the risks of that product.
And joining us live now to talk about the verdict is Robert Northrup, an attorney for the Philip Morris Company, one of those on trial in Newark.
I think the allocation of responsibility as set out by the jury in this case indicated that they still feel that an individual has a choice. And I don't think it's been shown that cigarettes are addictive. And in any case, we all know that millions of people have quit smoking.
Stephen Parrish is joining us right now. He was part of the defense team for Philip Morris and Lorillard Incorporated, which won that landmark case, and he joins us live from New Jersey via satellite to discuss the case.
I would still say this is a victory for the cigarette industry, and I will tell you why. Before this case started, we were told that this was going to be a new theory, a new approach that was going to turn the tide against the cigarette industry, and the way the plaintiff's lawyer was going to do that was by presenting company documents and alleging that there was a conspiracy among the cigarette companies. Well, we had 4.5 months of trial and a lot of documents shown to the jury, and yesterday they unanimously agreed that there was no conspiracy, there was no misrepresentation, there was no fraud, there was no concealment.
In-studio interviews were secured for attorneys on national and international news programs for a total of 63 million impressions.
We're going to spend a lot of time in the courtroom, are you not, Mr. Cohn?
No, I don't think so. I don't think this is going to increase the number of cases. I think they will decrease. The bottom line here is that I think most plaintiffs' lawyers who read this transcript of this trial and see the charges will understand that they can't hope to get as sympathetic a judge as Mr. Adele had, and that it's not worth the effort.
Did this jury therefore say everybody who smokes cigarettes, there's an inherent warranty from that company that it will be safe?
I'm not aware of any claim where, under a theory of express warranty in the past, someone has relied on an advertisement 30-odd years ago as a guarantee that one would not contract disease. I think it's a unique application of the express warranty theory, and that's one of the reasons why I think Liggett has a very solid basis for appealing the verdict.
The important thing is that the result on this breach of warranty or contract claim had nothing to do with these documents that so much has been made to do about.
On the day after the verdict, the press conference was held in Manhattan with 125 reporters and financial analysts in attendance. The jury's decision was hailed as a victory for the tobacco industry.
Cigarette makers went on the offensive today, one day after the first verdict holding a tobacco company liable for a smoker's lung cancer.
The tobacco company attacked the lawyers for Antonio Cipollone, who was awarded $400,000 for his wife Rose's death from cancer.
The real story of this litigation is not of a woman from New Jersey who smoked, but about money. Money. And about 3 very big, very rich New Jersey law firms.
One day after the verdict in New Jersey's landmark tobacco lawsuit, both sides are refusing to admit defeat.
The verdict in the Cipollone case is clearly a victory for the cigarette manufacturers, and any effort to characterize it otherwise is a distortion.
This trial was said to be different from all the other liability suits because of the internal cigarette company documents introduced by the plaintiff. At their news conference, the cigarette companies fired back with their own stack of memos, while claiming the plaintiff's paper trail in court led nowhere.
There were no smoking guns among those company papers.
Anti-smoking groups are breathing easier tonight following what they are calling a partial victory, their first ever. This comes from yesterday's federal court decision in New Jersey, which pitted a widower against 3 of the largest tobacco companies. But as Eric Shawn reports, the tobacco industry is taking the verdict in stride.
30-some years that the smoking and health controversy has been raging, this industry acted responsibly.
The cigarette lawyers struck back. At a packed press conference, they attacked Cipollone's lawyers, the judge, the Surgeon General, and smoking opponents. Noting Cipollone was awarded only a fraction of his legal team's estimated expenses, industry lawyers tried to downplay the significance of other lawsuits.
This is a clear demonstration that these cases are just not worth pursuing.
Extensive television, radio, and print coverage resulted in more than 180 million impressions. Following the press conference, the industry's claim of victory continued to make headlines in newspapers. Radio stations nationwide broadcast prepackaged feeds and live interviews reaching 43 million listeners.
We won this case insofar as the major claims are concerned, and I think Liggett has a very strong basis for appeal on the one claim which the jury returned a verdict against them.
Analysts agree that the cigarette companies came out on top.
I think the fact that the jury found Mrs. Cipollone 80% responsible for her choice to smoke and for her injury was the most important point.
Tobacco stocks fell on news of the verdict, but analysts predict they'll soon bounce back.
These companies are so strong financially and their earnings are going up so well. They're among the best managed companies in the world.
We think that this verdict stands for one proposition and one proposition only, and that is that in the 30-some years that the smoking and health controversy has been raging, this industry acted responsibly. It addressed the issues in a straightforward manner. It funded millions of dollars of independent research, both outside and in-house, and it attempted in every way possible to try to address the criticisms that were being leveled against these products.